Now if you look here, you will find that surrounding each glomerulus you will find a renal capsule, and out of the renal capsule we have the renal tubule. This is another glomerulus, renal capsule, and the renal tubule. All renal tubules, they join up into a tube, and this tube is called the collecting duct. It crosses the medulla, goes through the pelvis, and joins up with the ureter. Now we call this structure the glomerulus. One glomerulus with its renal capsule, with its renal tubule, we call it a nephron. So the nephron is made up of three things: the renal, the glomerulus, the renal capsule, and the renal tubule. In your book, you will find another name for nephrons. It is kidney tubules. So kidney tubules or nephrons, it is the same. But don't confuse between kidney tubule and renal tubule. Kidney tubule is the same as nephron, and nephron is composed of the renal tubule. This is the renal tubule. This is another diagram that shows two glomeruli, and we have the renal capsule, a renal tubule, and all of this is called a nephron or kidney tubule. So if we look at the renal tubule, we will find that the renal tubule starts in the cortex, it descends and goes to the medulla, it ascends again to the cortex. So if we look at the kidney, we will find the glomerulus, the renal tubule starts in the cortex, the outer region, it descends to the medulla, and it returns back to the cortex, and then joins the collecting duct, and the collecting duct will pass through the pelvis and join up with the ureter. Now, because we have high pressure in the glomerulus, we took in chapter 9, we said capillaries, they are under high pressure. So because we have high pressure in the glomerulus, a very important process called filtration occurs here. So filtration of the blood occurs in the glomerulus, and the filtrate is collected in the renal capsule. So everything can leak out of the blood of the capillaries or the glomeruli except large proteins, red blood cells, except in certain medical cases. For example, if people they have proteins in their urine, they might have a medical issue. So in normal cases, large proteins can't get out of the glomerulus. Red blood cells can't get out of the glomerulus. So we call this the renal capsule. The renal capsule, it's a sac that holds or collects the filtrated fluid that comes from the renal artery. So because we have here the filtrate, and the filtrate has or contains some important substances like glucose, we need to reabsorb back this glucose. If I asked you a question, what will we find inside the filtrate? In the filtrate we might find glucose, urea, salts, water, and small molecules in general, but we won't find proteins, red blood cells, white blood cells. We don't find them in the normal cases. So in the filtrate we have glucose, we have some important minerals that are needed to be reabsorbed. So after filtration, which is the first process in urine formation, we need to reabsorb the important substances like glucose. So we have two processes in urine formation. Number 1, filtration or ultrafiltration, and number 2, reabsorption. Now, again, we have blood coming from the renal artery, the glomerulus. It filtrates some substances. Other unfiltrated substances will complete the pathway. And as we can see, the capillaries, they are surrounding the tubule. Here we have glucose, urea, salts, water, the small molecules that leaked out. And we said we need to reabsorb the important molecules like glucose again. So reabsorption of glucose occurs here, mainly in this region. So we will reabsorb glucose back to the blood, to the capillaries, and the other substances will complete. In the collecting duct, this is the collecting duct, reabsorption of water will occur. So in this region, reabsorption of glucose back to the blood, to the capillaries that surround the renal tubule, and in the collecting duct, reabsorption of water. And if I asked you, do you think the reabsorption of glucose here is by diffusion, active transport, or passive transport? I want you to think about the answer. So let's look at this diagram. Here we can see the cortex, we have the medulla, and we have the pelvis. This is the ureter. It comes out of the pelvis. This is the renal artery, and we have the renal vein. So as we said, the kidneys are made of thousands of tiny tubules or nephrons, so we call them either nephrons or kidney tubule. And one nephron is made up of one glomerulus, the renal capsule, and the renal tubule. So filtration occurs in the glomerulus and reabsorption occurs in other regions of the kidney tubule.